Good afternoon. All right, definitely home stretch. And by the way, I did get the memo. I am only going to talk about rail, clearly. I work at Amtrak. So excited to be with you all today to talk about, here's the clicker, initiatives at Amtrak to help expand passenger rail across the country, specifically Texas. Happy to be back here. I was here, I think, was it 2 years ago? And this is I love this type of conference because it's a small room, but when you know so many people in the room and you see so many friendly faces, it sort of helps as a presenter, at least I can speak for myself. And thanks to Peter and the Texas Rail Advocates for inviting me again. Okay, here we go. Okay, so for over 50 years, the mission of Amtrak is to provide efficient, effective intercity passenger service with high quality service that is trip time competitive with competitive modes and other intercity travel options. We operate over 300 trains a day, traveling over 21,000 route miles, over 30 host railroads and the Northeast Corridor. And our over 22,000 employees, they help us connect 500 stations in 46 states. And we have 3 service lines. They're shown here on the map in the different colors. The colors are a little off for me here, but the darker blue is our long distance, the lighter blue is Northeast Corridor, and red is state supported. So the Northeast Corridor, who has rode on the Northeast Corridor in the room? Good amount of hands. So that runs from Washington, D.C. to Boston through other cities like New York City and Philadelphia and New Haven. And that's where we run our Acela and our Northeast Regional services. We have 15 long-distance routes, and those are routes that are greater than 750 miles. And then we run 28 state-supported services. Those are those that are less than 750 miles, and that's in collaboration with 21 states and local partners. And you can see from the map that the state-supported service line specifically, that's shown in red, are concentrated across the country. So they're concentrated on the East Coast, the West Coast, and around Chicago. And the majority of the country is not served by these shorter distance trains. In fiscal year 24, and I'm going to talk a little bit about 24 and our successes in a few minutes, 45% of our ridership was on the state-supported routes, 40% on the Northeast Corridor, and 15% on long distance. And we service Texas specifically with one state-supported route, the Heartland Flyer. I'll talk a little bit about the future in a few minutes, and 2 long-distance routes, the Texas Eagle and the Sunset Limited. So last year was a banner year for Amtrak. In fiscal year 24, we had record ridership, over 32 million customers, 15% greater year over year from the previous year, 23, and far exceeded our pre-COVID levels. 11 of the 28 state-supported services, state-supported routes had record ridership in fiscal year 24. And we also had record revenue, 7% greater year over year from the previous year, and that included $2.5 billion in ticket revenue. So last year, we invested nearly $4.5 billion in capital and construction projects. And that is critical to the future of the railroad, and this included key infrastructure projects, new train set procurement, and ADA upgrades to many of our stations across the country. We also awarded $10 billion in new contracts with the private sector. And In fiscal year '24, in advancing our ADA station upgrades, we've recorded over 120 stations to date. All right, there you go. So I think Jim showed this, a version of this. Mine looks a little prettier, just saying. So the key to this continued growth, and by the way, I don't think if you can tell, I'm trying to be very positive, and so my remarks are really going to err on the side of positivity. I am, we've heard a mixture today, but I hope you're all okay with that. If you're not, you can close your ears. So the key to all of the growth and the records that I just talked about is to create and maintain a modern railroad. And we are doing this through many of the projects that we have in our capital program. So I mentioned that last year we set a record for the company and delivered a capital program of $4.5 billion. You can see from this graphic that our capital program is poised to, bless you, to grow significantly over the next few years. What's not shown on this graphic is that in 2019, our capital program was about $200 million. Okay, so if that gives you any indication about how impactful the influx of funds have been over the last few years and how important that is to maintain the railroad and to grow and to deliver better service. So the capital program includes new equipment, bridges, tunnels, continued upgrades to our basic railroad infrastructure. And we're looking forward to our new Acela train sets later this year. I'm excited to hear the presentation that's following. And also our new Aero train sets for state-supported lines, and those for state-supported as well as the Northeast Corridor. And the first delivery of the Aero train sets will be to the Pacific Northwest on our Cascades line. I don't know where the gentleman is who was talking about the Cascades. And that's going to be in 2026. There we go. So our recent growth has us on a path to grow ridership even more in the coming years. And that includes our new Borealis service, I know that was mentioned earlier today, between Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Chicago. That's in partnership with the states of Illinois, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. Minnesota is a new state partner. And the tremendous growth, one round trip, many years in the making, we heard that earlier. I didn't think it was from the 90s, but one of the gentlemen who works for me, who formerly led the Wisconsin Rail Division, he told me 10 years seriously, but still 10 years for one round trip on a line where we currently operate service. I think that kind of tells the story. So this map is something that we developed in-house, and it's showing the FRA Corridor ID program awards, 69 corridors awarded in the first round. I'm sure you all have. I'm not going into a lot of detail on the basics of Corridor ID because I'm sure you've heard that, or many of you are informed about that. But this is the framework, the foundation for all of the future growth across the country. So as of mid-January, these statistics are all on FRA's website. The majority of the corridors have been obligated for step one. So step one is developing the scope, schedule, and budget for step two, which is the service development plan. And that step two activity, the service development plan, is the critical early planning effort to show feasibility, to show, to start communicating early with the host railroads. I heard who spoke earlier, I think it was Kevin Keller, about the state rail plan and how the host railroads were brought in sort of more towards the tail end. And I don't like to be contrary, but I do completely disagree with that statement. what we have found in this new era of growing rail is that the earlier you can engage the host railroads and get them on board, that is where we're going to find successes in expanding service across the country. We're already seeing the benefits of that. And what the conversations we've had with the Class 1 host railroads is that in the past, all of these planning studies have been done, and they hear about it in the press. And the days of that are no longer. The FRA Corridor ID program and the staff that FRA has brought on are facilitating these conversations with the host railroad early and often, and that's going to be the recipe for helping us move these corridors forward. The service development plan is also important because at the end of that, not only will you have developed ridership and revenue and all the information you need to determine what projects are necessary to implement to start that service, but you also need to show that you have a state that has a path forward to a strong passenger rail division to run these projects, as well as committed funding from the state, because these are state partnership. It's a state partnership program. So of the 69 corridors that were awarded, Amtrak received 4. The first 3 are being led by my team. The first 2 are specific to long distance. So of the 15 long distance routes that we operate across the country, 2, they all run daily with the exception of 2, which is the Cardinal and the Sunset Limited. So our corridor ID efforts are focused on bringing those 3 days a week service to daily. We have our Amtrak to Long Island corridor, which is a proposal to extend our Northeast regional service that runs from Washington, D.C. to New York, and extend that out to Long Island to Ronkonkoma. So we would directly serve Queens, Nassau County, and Suffolk County. And then the fourth one is the Amtrak Texas high-speed rail corridor that would connect Dallas and Houston, and we've heard a little bit about that earlier. So the first 3 have completed step 1, and we're awaiting step 2 obligation, and we're very hopeful that now that the new administration, FRA leadership is coming on board, we're very hopeful that those obligations will start flowing. And Texas high-speed rail is in step 3, so very quickly worked through step 1 and 2, and now are in step 3 of the program because of all the previous work that had been done. So a little more background on the Daily Sunset Limited. This is a project that would, that's a line that serves Texas now, and with daily service would provide more service to critical areas where, where the intercity rail service is really the only transportation option to bring people to where they want to go. So the Sunset Limited last operated daily in 1970. So that was when Amtrak was established. And in addition, under Corridor ID, in addition to looking at how we can bring the 3-day-a-week service to daily, we are also looking at restoring service to Phoenix, which I think is going to be a critical component. Phoenix is the largest city in the country that we do not serve today. So specifically zooming in on Texas, that's where we're sitting. Of the 69 corridors selected by FRA into the Corridor ID program, 10% are routes that travel either within or through Texas. As these advance, we look forward to working with all of the grantees leading the program. We are actively working on the Heartland Flyer extension. I know that that Rich Andreski mentioned that earlier, and working very closely with KDOT and their consultants to help provide the Amtrak-focused information and data to support their work, and also working with the Southern Rail Commission and the I-20 corridor. Recently did a very good sort of remote desktop review of some of the station locations with the folks that are already working on that. So, here to help in any way we can in terms of technical support for any and all of the corridors. That looks better on the map. It doesn't look that good here. So Corridor ID, as many of you know, focuses primarily on the state-supported routes less than 750 miles. And FRA's long-distance study evaluated the restoration of long-distance service and potential new services, and these are routes that are greater than 750 miles. And Amtrak was a stakeholder in the study. I attended many of the stakeholder workshops over the year-and-a-half study. I saw Jim many times around, sat across the table from him. And who in the room attended? Any other than Jim and I? A few folks. So, I think this was mentioned earlier. There's been a lot of speakers today, and it might have been Jim who mentioned that FRA and their consultants really did a great job engaging folks. It was a monumental effort to look at the entire country and to get to the point of recommending the 15 routes that they did. And they issued the final report in January, and there's a lot more work to be done. The report is out there if you haven't looked at it yet, but one thing to note specifically about this corridor, again, 9 of the 15 preferred routes that were identified by FRA travel through or within Texas. So when you think about the future of long distance, and hopefully if funding becomes available to focus on these routes, chances are, since 9 of the 15 are, travel through Texas, that it's promising that one of the routes that could move forward would positively impact Texas and the future of intercity service here. So with all of these programs, Corridor ID, long distance, there's many steps to go before we see the trains rolling. And as you all know, we've talked about this a lot. We've heard it from the previous speakers that these things do take a long time. But we have been actively working on expansions, and many are on the horizon. So many are adding frequencies to our existing service. So that would be in this list here, Hiawatha between Chicago and Milwaukee, adding frequencies, Piedmont between Raleigh and Charlotte, adding frequencies there, and the Pennsylvanian between Pittsburgh and New York City, and as well as our California services, bringing those back to pre-COVID levels. So in the categories, adding frequencies, we're also looking at extensions. So specifically an extension of the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority's Northeast regionals that travel the Northeast Corridor and currently terminate in Roanoke, Virginia. And we're looking to extend those to Christiansburg, Virginia in the New River Valley. And then, is John Robert Smith still here? Oh, he had to leave. Okay, so John Robert Smith, Knox, if they were in the audience, I would say I left the best for last, which is we are working diligently with the Southern Rail Commission, with the city of Mobile, the states of Louisiana and Mississippi to bring back the Gulf Coast service between New Orleans and Mobile. And this is going to be new twice daily service, And the host railroads on there are CSX and Norfolk Southern, and we look forward to that coming up, being launched this year. So we are truly, truly excited. This is not just me speaking. This is Amtrak as an organization. We are very, very proud of what we were able to deliver last year, and we want to keep that momentum going. Continuing to break records, continuing to grow ridership, to grow revenue across the country, advancing and completing our major capital projects, delivering new train sets, the new Acellas this year, and the Aero train sets in the coming years, and just in general bringing more trains to more people across the country. And that's the end of my presentation. I wanted to be brief, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.